Good morning. You guys awake? My name is Ken Claiborne, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of this congregation. Welcome to you all. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart is a welcoming community encouraging religious freedom and nurturing individual spiritual and ethical growth, celebrating diversity and promoting a just and sustainable world. If you'd like to learn more about this fellowship, please look at our website at uufe.org and join us after the service for our coffee hour. For the listening enjoyment of all, we ask that you at this time either turn your cell phones off or to the mute mode. Also, if you need hearing support, please ask for help at the sound desk. They have hearing impaired devices back there. One reminder about meditation today. Meditation after the service at 11:45 is in the basement here in the Cups room. We've had to move from the learning center. God, I have a brain learning center because we do have black mold in the basement. We discovered it about 2 weeks ago, and we're right now we've got an estimate and we're trying to figure out a way to get it fixed. So anyway, thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm Judy Darnell, and I'm here with the announcements. And I was going to announce that the meditation group meets at the Learning Center, but I'm glad of that correction, and I want everybody to stay healthy. Another regular announcement I make is about the yoga group, which will meet Thursday, as usual, in the gathering place at 6 o'clock. And then Friday at 7 o'clock is the first meeting of the Society of Radical Readers. The subject of our discussion will be the frequently banned young adult novel, All American Boys. It is by Jason Reynolds and Brian Keeley, which explores the effects of violence through the eyes of two teenage boys. This book takes some interesting twists, so we'll see you Friday, and I will post the announcements on the bulletin board after the service so you can double check, make sure you get the authors and whatnot. The membership committee will hold new U classes on Saturdays, November 12th and 19th, for both new and not so new friends and members of UUFE. If you would like more information or would like to attend, contact membership chair Annette Long. Her information is in the directory. And she's also right there waving her hand if you want to turn around. Okay, November Feasters will meet early on Wednesday, November 16th, a week early, instead of the 4th Wednesday. So we figure everybody's going to be home making pies and making their cranberry sauce or whatever. But they'll be meeting at Michael's Italian Restaurant at 528 Harrison Street here in Elkhart. November's $2 Community Euchre meets Sunday, November 13th from 4 to 6:30 in the gathering place with a soup supper afterwards. Please remember to add a few items to your grocery cart for the street side food pantry next time you shop. Feel free to scrutinize our shelves by the kitchen annex to get a better idea of what is needed. And our worship and arts and ministerial research committees will soon wind up their surveys, which can be found on Ivy Island. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to complete them and place them in the collection box. Let's see here. The worship and arts committee is looking for musicians. This can be voice, piano, guitar, or any instrument. You will receive our heartfelt appreciation if you participate. If you are interested, see, email, or call a member of the committee, Joan Claiborne, Laura Snow, Lorna Lane, Oksana Warbiansky, or Chuck Bauer. And again, their contact information is in the church directory, and I think at least a few of them are here. Don't forget that our care team is available for those of us who may need a helping hand from time to time. Members of the care team can be reached by leaving a message on the church answering machine or by calling any of the team members, who are Mary Adams, Steve Kripe, Jim Todd, Mary Perrin, Dwight Fish, Karen Kripe, and Peg Cook. Their information is in the directory. It's a popular book. Tonight is our Trunk or Treat Halloween party, which is from 5 to 7 this evening. We hope to see everyone. We will accept free-to-well donations at the party for a nest egg to host a December party. And last week's offering, and I failed to get the number for that, will be shared with the Jail Chaplaincy Fund, along with this week's. So with that, I will gather the fan club, which is sitting on quieter than it was, on the floor. So have a good service, everybody.
We ring the gong 3 times, once for those who came before and made a place for us, once for those who are here now, and once for those who will come after and build on the dream. The chalice lighting is by Atina O. Danner. Loss binds us together undeniably. Like the aching low moan of a cello, you feel it first. Other senses follow. Feel it in that place where the keening cry of a wounded heart begins. In loss, we could be family. In that shared knowing and need. In these chances to rebirth kindness to each other.
If you'll join me in the unison covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant.
We bring into our hearts all those who have gone before us, all those whose living in this world has prepared the soil for our living, all those whose being has enabled our being. These words come to us from Leslie Takahashi. I'm Janelle Crump, and we have a special Joys and Sorrows today focused on honoring our ancestors. Before you drop a pebble into the water, name them and perhaps tell us what makes them someone you would especially like to name today. You'll notice in the water there's a marigold because marigolds are the unofficial flower for the Day of the Dead. I light the first candle to brighten our gratitude for our ancestors. Are both of these mics on? Is it on now? Yes. Okay. I'll begin by naming my maternal great-grandmother, don't laugh at the name, Versie Gertrude Moore. I wear her wedding ring, and she was widowed in 1908 with 6 children and raised them all. Graduated high school and got additional professional training, and here I am.
I'm Dwight, and I'd like to honor Oksana's uncle, Vojko Romko, if you like weird names, Uncle Roman. And this is the time of year when I think about him a lot. We were there in 2000 to visit him, and I was honored by his clear thinking and his honesty and rock-solid spirit as a Ukrainian. Slava Ukraine.
I'm Elizabeth Blackwell, and I'm honoring my mom and my dad and my grandmother, that's John and Sally Blackwell, and Lola Slaughter. They all have passed, but they were very important influences in our lives, and I feel like they live on through me, and I'm passing it on to my children, and I hope that everything that they taught me will continue to live on, because they were wonderful people.
I'm Carl, and I'm going to honor my mom and dad. My dad, Howard Rust, taught me how to think for myself, and my mom, Catherine, was always singing, so I get my singing from her, and my nephew, Don, who just passed away from adrenal cortical cancer in March.
I would like to honor 2 colonial ancestors, one for myself and one for Judy. The first one for myself is Sertje van Tassel. She came from the little village of Sleepy Hollow in Westchester, New York, and her cousin Katrina, a fictional, was courted by Ichabod Crane. Okay. The other one is Sarah Barnes, who was executed for witchcraft in Hartford, Connecticut, 30 years before the Salem witch trials.
I'm Mike. These are for my grandfather, Heikki Poronen, who came to the United States from Finland to avoid being drafted into the Russian army, and my grandmother, Hanna Maren. Uva Sumwa.
I'm Joan Claiborne. I'm remembering Ken's father, Harold. My mother and father, Leela and Glenn Richards. My brothers, Dean and Jean Richards. And my beautiful daughter, Lindsay Loesch.
I'm Phyllis Davenport Hostetler, and I'm just going to honor my Davenport relatives, ancestors, who came to the United States in the 1630s into the southern coast of North Carolina. And a long line, Lancelot Davenport was the first name that we know, and a long line of Davenports who moved across Virginia and North Carolina and my cousins are now settled in Hendersonville area, North Carolina. And most of them were farmers. Probably the first one was an indentured servant. And my dad had to move from North Carolina because during the 30s there were no jobs available, and he was one of the oldest in the family, so he moved to Ohio to start working in a factory, got a job in a factory. So honor all of them.
Sorry. Between October and November, both my mom and dad died during those months, so it's a little tender for me. So I honor Maria Holshoe and her family lineage, and I honor my dad, Willie Holshoe, and his family lineage. And I also honor my biological mom and her family and my biological father. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck. I'm going to honor my my mother's father, my grandfather, Artie Walters, who farmed until his early 70s, and he loved to farm. He loved the soil. And then I'm also going to honor my father, Lawrence Bauer, who always said he lived an uneventful life, and he was a tail gunner in a B-24 bomber in World War II. So that says it.
Drop one in for my Davenports. I forgot to put one in.
I'm Emily, and I'd like to honor my grandparents, Horace and Mary Bates, who...
I want to hear it.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, my grandparents, Horace and Mary Bates, who raised me when my mother died at age 22. And the Bates brothers who came here from England in 1636. And that strong branch of New England people, mostly the last few generations in teaching and in that whole area. And my beautiful little daughter, Lucy, who passed. I'm just grateful to all of them, and I'm grateful to Lucy for living when she did.
Here we go.
I honor my mom and dad, Roger and Jean Snow. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. And most of my mom's ancestors were immigrants in the early 1900s. And so my grandmother, my mom's mom, and my grandfather were from Denmark and Germany. My dad's family, his mother, her family immigrated from the Netherlands. But last year we got some interesting family history. We took my sister and I traveled out to Maine, and we scattered my dad's ashes off of Pemaquid Point, and he joined my mom. We had done that a few years earlier. So now I have to go to Maine to visit. But we found an interesting thing about my dad's dad, the Snow line. Turns out the Snows were from Maine. They immigrated during the 1700s, prior to the Revolutionary War. They were apparently Tories, loyal to the crown, and eventually left the United States and moved up to Prince Edward Island up in Canada. So I drop a stone for John Snow is the most recent old relative, my fourth great-grandfather, and his wife Elizabeth. We actually found the tombstones when we were in a little town in Maine. So that's for the Snow line.
I'm going to share one that came in on Zoom from Rebecca Fazette. She would like to honor her maternal grandmother. She says, "She taught me more than I can list today, but most importantly to live with grace and forgiveness. Also how to bake a pie properly. I have many of her cooking and baking utensils and think of her every time I make a lemon meringue pie. She was our matriarch, and she taught us also about our genealogy tracing back to the Mayflower."
I'm Gordon, and I'd like to honor my parents, Wilbur and Velma. Velma Lapp, my father, Wilbur Hostetler, and Jacob Hostetler, who came to the United States in 1738. So, they were Amish, but they weren't Old Order Amish. The Old Order Amish just started in the late 1800s. So,
Hi, my name is Miles. I go everywhere with my coffee, so forgive me. I would like to honor my father, Floyd Schubert. He really taught me how to love everybody, stay strong on my spirituality, and to always remember to walk the right way. It didn't matter what everybody else was doing, you just choose the right way to go. And my grandma, Beatrice Jennings, she really helped instill family time on me. And that family is the most important thing. And then I'd also like to give a shout out for everybody before us that helped pave the way so that we can do what we want to do these days. Because without them, we wouldn't be able to meet.
I want to honor Phil's grandparents, Mama, Papa, and his Italian grandparents, Nono and Nona, whom he speaks of so often. sorry, I know I dropped this last stone for all those ancestors unnamed or unknown. One more. And I light this last candle to shine a light on our own place and responsibility as present or future ancestors ourselves.
It's the end of October already. It seems like it just started. The theme for the month of October is fear. So I suppose it's fitting, a very fitting way to end October with my message today, Samhain and the Devil. Fear tends to permeate these subjects. Samhain, rituals, the devil, both culturally and religiously. And my goal today is to hopefully dispel some of that cultural fear. In his new book, Ritual: How Seemingly Senseless Acts Make Life Worth Living, anthropologist Demetrius Zagalatis delves into the one odd behavior all human cultures engage in, and that's ritual. To be honest, I haven't read the entire book yet, but the very beginning really caught my attention, and I think it's important. In it, he says, without a single exception, all known human societies, whether past or present, have a range of traditions that involve highly choreographed, formalized, and precisely executed behaviors that mark threshold moments in people's lives. These behaviors, which we call rituals, have no explicit purpose at all, or even when they do, their stated goals are causally disconnected from the actions undertaken to achieve them. In other words, people engage in activities that are symbolic, that generally have no direct cause and effect relationship with the intended goal of the actions taken. And yet they impart deep meaning, such as our ritual by honoring our ancestors. And rituals are most often associated with religion, but not entirely. We have a lot of secular rituals that we partake in. So today, I'd like to welcome everybody to our Sunday morning ritual. In reading up on rituals in the early church, I came across an interesting article. According to this article, and I found the article on history.com, which is kind of the spark notes or cliff notes of history. So it's a really good place to get very generalized information about different historic events. But it's a good source for that, for basic information. And on history.com, I found this article, and it's about a theory that was developed by two economists, Peter Leeson and Jacob Russ, in an article that ran in the Economic Journal regarding medieval persecution of witches. So it's Samhain. I have to work in witches somehow. I was really curious on what he had to say, and it turned out to be rather interesting. The gist of this theory states that the prevalence of religious witch hunts began after the Protestant Reformation in 1517, and it was a fear tactic used to gain converts between the new Protestant denominations and the Catholic Church. So that's the gist of their theory. the witch hunts took off after the Reformation, and it was to try to scare people to all these different new denominations cropping up. Whoever could scare the people the most got the most converts. Yes, people were executed prior to the Reformation, but this article says that statistically the numbers just skyrocketed afterwards. The church has accused mostly women of worshiping Satan with profane rituals. That was their hook. The church that struck the most fear of Satan, his witches, and their rituals into people won the most converts. Should come as no surprise that Germany, the birthplace of the Protestant Reformation, saw the most witch trials and executions. So instilling fear into the population had economic advantages for churches, and connecting pagan rituals to Satan helped fuel their gains. And I mention all of this not to bash Christianity, but to address the power dynamic that was used by both the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches of the time. And also to point out that it created a negative emotional response to the word ritual. Christian churches had services and masses. Pagans and Satan worshipers had rituals. They're the same thing, people. And most pagans, modern pagans especially, are okay with using the term ritual. We know what it is. And we're okay with that. But the churches tied the word to the devil through a campaign of fear-mongering. And no pagan ritual seems to instill as much fear in Christians, even today, than the one we just had, Samhain. That's the honoring the ancestors comes from Samhain. Samhain is an ancient Celtic festival, and it celebrates the last harvest of the season, ushers in the new year with winter. And it's also an important time to remember the dead. It is traditionally believed that the veil, a cosmic spiritual partition that separates our reality from the world of the dead, is at its thinnest. And this allows the spirits of our ancestors to slip through and roam our world for a night. What makes this notion unsettling and even scary is that not all ancestors or spirits are welcome. We acknowledge this. Some spirits are downright terrifying. So to protect the living, the ancient Celts would disguise themselves. This ritual did two things. The Celts would not be mistaken for spirits, and it confused the unwanted spirits from finding the living. Bonfires were often lit to keep unwanted spirits at bay. Druids, who were the priest class of the ancient Celts, used this time to commune with the dead through rituals. Cold, dark nights could be a fearful thing, and these rituals offered comfort. Christianity, in its earliest formation in Europe, and for this I'm going to specifically talk about the Catholic Church, since they were the first ones, made use of this fear as it absorbed the old Celtic beliefs. Samhain began to change. In 837, All Saints' Day was formalized within the Catholic Church and celebrated on November 1st as a way to uplift the saints for the Catholic Church. Samhain, which had been celebrated roughly October 31st, became All Hallows' Eve, or Halloween, the night before All Saints' Day. And not to dismiss the ancestors entirely, All Souls' Day was added in 993 AD as a way to commemorate the Christian faithful among the common folk. Christianity, through the Catholic Church, had pretty much appropriated the old Celtic festival of Samhain. But not everyone bought into the Christianized version of Samhain. Many of the old Celtic traditions and rituals continued despite the Catholic Church's efforts to absorb and change customs. More drastic measures were needed to get folks on board with Christianity, so the church set to work vilifying the old ways. Again, paraphrasing from history.com, quote, unsettled spirits of the dead became demons. The Celtic deities, such as the horned god Cernunnos, became Satan, the devil, and the Celtic underworld became hell. Again, fear was used to coerce folks to Catholicism and later Protestantism, demonizing the celebration of Samhain, as an example. Now, modern Samhain rituals have evolved from their pre-Christian pagan roots. These rituals continue to honor the changing seasons and last harvest, offering seasonal foods to the god and goddess in thanks. The candles up here, the black one represents the goddess. The orange one we used last night to represent the god. And that was our harvest portion of our Samhain ritual. And we give thanks for that, for the bounty of the harvest. For many pagans, and this is modern pagans especially, Samhain has become an important ritual for honoring our ancestors, friends, and even pets that have passed on. This ritual often has a profound emotional impact on those who participate. Historically, communing with the dead was the job of the Celtic Druids, but modern Samhain gives us permission to welcome back loved ones through memories, storytelling, and ritual. Families will often create altars of the dead with photos and memorabilia from the deceased arrayed around candles and other symbols associated with death. And that's why we have the skull. It gives us permission to openly grieve, even after years since a loved one's passing. It gives us permission to laugh at stories of the deceased. It also gives us permission to banish those who may have harmed us in life, however that harm may have looked, by addressing the hurt directly. One celebratory ritual of Samhain is the Dumb Supper, which welcomes the spirit of the loved ones to a feast. And I will say this is a more modern interpretation, the Dumb Supper. But I know after my mom passed, we did a Dumb Supper with my dad, and it was very meaningful for him. An extra place is set at the table with food and drink served from the dinner feast. An invitation to our loved ones is extended to come and participate in the meal. Boundaries can be established, particularly if boundaries were an issue in life. Loved ones may be invited by name, or an invitation can be just generalized to one's ancestors. The meal is often eaten in silence as we contemplate the life and legacy of our loved ones. But it doesn't have to be. Dumb suppers can include a lot of laughter as we tell stories of memories of our loved ones. The Dumb Supper can offer comfort and connection with our ancestors in a supportive community. For many pagans, Samhain is a sacred time to simply get comfortable with the reality of death. Death is a frightening subject for many people, and no one represents death and that fear as well as the devil, Satan himself. Now we get to the good part. As mentioned previously, the Catholic Church did a good job of frightening people by rebranding pagan deities as the evil being Satan, and the pagan celebrations like Samhain as satanic rituals. God represented all that was good while Satan became the opposition to God, the embodiment of evil. God represented eternal life and the soul in heaven, while Satan represented eternal death of the soul with damnation in hell. But was Satan really that evil? The biblical story, in a nutshell, has God casting the rebellious angel, sometimes referred to as Lucifer, the morning star, out of heaven for daring to challenge God's authority. God declared that all entities were to bow down to him and his son Jesus. Lucifer and his angel supporters challenged this order, believing that they should all be equal in status. Doesn't sound too evil to me, but rather egalitarian, even democratic, maybe in a socialist democratic side. For that challenge, he was banished from heaven, labeled as being prideful in his quest for equal status with God. His opposition to God's authority became synonymous with evil. Much of our imagery of Satan, however, comes from two early literary pieces: Dante's Inferno, from his Divine Comedy, which was written in 1320, and John Milton's Paradise Lost, written in 1667. And I still have some of my scribbled notes in my Milton book. Dante established the terrifying imagery we have today of hell, the 9 circles of hell, with Satan at the center as its ruler. Here Satan becomes the ultimate punisher of those that have sinned against God, devouring the likes of Brutus, Cassius, and Judas in perpetuity. That's from the Inferno, as Dante travels to the last circle where he encounters Satan. Satan has 3 heads, and he's eating Brutus, Cassius, and Judas. John Milton fleshed out Satan as a more human-like character, and creating a rather sympathetic one at that. In an article from The Atlantic, writer Edward Simon not only discusses how Milton's Satan, referred to by his angelic name Lucifer, is a relatable, all-too-human character, but is uniquely representative of the American mentality. It's a really interesting article. You should look it up. Americans are Satan, basically. This version of Satan is a rebel, a rugged individualist who shuns blind obedience. Sounds pretty American. This can best be described with Lucifer's line, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." And that's from Paradise Lost. But what about today? What does Satan represent by today's standards? In the TV show Lucifer, and if you haven't watched Lucifer, you really should. It's really funny. It's funny, too. The protagonist is Lucifer Morningstar. He's a nightclub owner. There's your sin and hedonism. That works with an LA detective catching bad guys. He's in therapy trying to come with grips with his relationship to his father, all while fulfilling his job of hunting down human evildoers and bringing them to justice, just as his dad wanted him to. That doesn't sound too evil. By the show's standard, the devil is performing an important function in society. For too many Christians, however, Satan is out there tempting people with all sorts of evil choices, not administering justice to those who freely choose evil actions. For these Christians, such choices include being gay or trans, reading certain books, health care that includes abortion, black and brown people's rights, and even rock music. That's why I picked AC/DC. That was the first album I ever bought, too, by the way. The devil made me do it is an easy way to blame someone else while denying one's own responsibility in the choices they make. Today, there are two religious organizations that use the Satan worship narrative: the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple. The Church of Satan was started by Anton LaVey in 1966, and it has a much more cult-like attitude, I guess. And they follow a more hedonistic path, although there is emphasis on personal responsibility and not harming others. The Satanic Temple, however, was founded in 2012 by Lucian Greaves and Malcolm Jerry. I want to focus on the Satanic Temple. It was started as a way to provide religious opposition to Christian displays in public spaces by leaning into that Christian narrative of Satan. While officially a religion, and it is listed as a religious entity, the Satanic Temple has become a worthy political advocate for many causes that are near and dear to us as Unitarian Universalists and pagans: abortion rights, using science and reason, and the support of the separation of church and state. This group does outreach work and organizing in two main areas: countering the evangelical-based, the Good News Clubs that meet in public schools. Not all public schools, but a lot of schools allow this group to be there. And they counter with the After School Satan Club. And they campaign for reproductive rights by filing lawsuits that claim religious suppression. On September 22nd of this year, the Satanic Temple sued the state of Indiana over the recent near-total abortion ban, claiming it violates the religious rights of its members in the state. In the official press release, the Satanic Temple states that it, quote, confronts religious discrimination to secure the separation of church and state and defend the constitutional rights of its members, unquote. So what is the basis of all of this? Well, the Satanic Temple has 7 fundamental tenets. Tenet number 1: one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Number 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. This is the one they're suing Indiana over. Number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's will alone. Number 4, the freedom of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Number 5, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. Number 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. And number 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. Those are the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. These tenets seem very similar to some of our own UU principles. The Satanic Temple has pending lawsuits in Texas and Idaho over similar abortion bans and restrictions as well. Upholding an individual's body autonomy is apparently satanic. If that is the case, then I'm okay with the devil, even at Samhain rituals. Thank you. Blessed be.
This hymn might be a little unfamiliar, but we'll not worry about that this morning because Laura chose it for its text and the message and the words. So that's what's important this morning. So would you stand, please, if you're willing and able, hymn number 96.
Today's benediction is very similar to the one I used last night at our ritual. Our ritual has ended. May your ancestors be with you in your hearts and memories. Go with God's peace in your hearts and the goddess's blessing for your ancestors. And may you be just a bit devilish in the pursuit of justice. Blessed be and skol.